Welcome. This is Debra and Clement, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of Shortcut to the Soul. Today I am going to talk about Jupiter, and last time we talked about Jupiter by sign, so today I'm going to talk about Jupiter by house. Now, where are the opportunities? Where's the good fortune, right? Where's the luck, so to speak, by house? Well, the house that Jupiter occupies in the horoscope, that describes the life areas, talents, vocations, relationships, where quite honestly we find it easier to expand, to develop, reap some financial rewards or personal benefits. So I'm going to go through the 12 houses, and again, I'm going to give you a snapshot. And by all means, I encourage you to study the 12 houses, all of the different, areas, all of the different relationships as well. And because, as I say, it's a snapshot. So sure, I'm going to leave something out along the way. But let's start with Jupiter in the first house. So when Jupiter is in the first house, and especially if it is conjunct the ascendant, all right, because it is going to be stronger if it's on the angle. It can be really very, very, very fortunate. When I say for attracting opportunities, getting noticed. Remember, first house opposes the seventh. So if it's on the ascendant, it is activating the seventh house, the other. So it can really be helpful to be recognized. But even when it's just in the first house and not conjunct the ascendant, it's a fortunate placement for attracting helpful people. Now, the other side of Jupiter in the first house is it will make its own opportunities because it's outgoing. It's a very optimistic, it's enthusiastic, and to be honest with you, people with Jupiter in the first house, very often they have a lot of charisma. They can usually work and play well with others, even if it's on a more superficial basis. Doesn't mean they're going to be your best buddy, but wherever they go, they can kind of, they're good at the chit-chat, they can work the room. And so Jupiter in the first, in terms of life areas or in terms of occupations, I am going to say, obviously, there's a lot of wanderlust with Jupiter in the first house, this love of travel. Also, you've got Jupiter in the first, eternal students. You're always learning, okay? And you share what you learn. If you won, $168 million in a lottery or something, you may quit your job and you may spend a lot of time just studying, learning, or maybe you'd be out there teaching or preaching because it is this strong desire to share what you know. Now, it's very fortunate in terms of careers, sometimes we have more than one, right? It's fortunate for radio, for television, motivational speaking, inspirational speaking. And that could be leading a congregation. It could be a spiritual leader. Politics, Jupiter in the first can certainly get into the mix there. And because of, Jupiter does rule marketing, right? So marketing, anything to do with promotion and the media in general, and that includes publishing. And publishing is very broad today. It's not just about the books anymore, right? It's, it could be publishing video, but Jupiter in the first house can be attracted to it, and it can really go far because there's this charisma with Jupiter in the first house. So it tends to come off well when they're in front of a camera. Anything to do with, I mentioned there's this wanderlust, so travel, okay, can be very beneficial in terms of even bringing opportunities. Now, I don't mean necessarily it's because you go to a foreign country and, you find a great opportunity there. That might happen. It is just as likely that you're sitting next to somebody on the plane or you're sitting in the airport and you start some chit chat with them. Because like I say, Jupiter, very much natural sort of, maitre d', natural facilitator. And so when you've got Jupiter in the first house, again, very inspiring, very optimistic, and that's contagious. And that's why you can attract people. They want to support you because let's face it, we all like to be around people, that, are right, that are happier rather than depressed. And especially if you're people who lift us up or who help us feel inspired. Now, it doesn't mean just because you have Jupiter in the first that you're going to be in some big spotlight or that you want to be. And it may just be something you do even in your family. But Jupiter in the first is usually very good again at counseling, at mentoring, helping other people. And as I say, it's good at initiating, making its own opportunities in the sense of just being out there and saying, hey, this is what I do. I sell real estate. Do you need a house? Does your cousin need a house? You know someone who wants to list a house? Here's my card. If you hear of anything, call me. It's good at working the room. And so Jupiter in the second house, well, that can be fortunate, of course, for business, right? For money, for accumulating stuff. Of course, Jupiter can also be excess, right? Yeah, Jupiter can be excess. And so you could end up with too much stuff. And I'm not going to say you could end up with too much money, because I don't think anyone, right, if you had too much money, well, you could give it, right, you can give it away. But what you do have to watch, well, Jupiter there, it can be easy to attract money and resources, whether it's getting it when you do get a job, not having it be like, I've got a teeny bit of a raise, getting that big a raise. But to be honestly, it can be very easy to spend it as well. So Jupiter can come and it can go. You can make great money, but your savings account, may not be that strong. Now, in a positive sense, if the aspects support it, you can have a very healthy financial portfolio. Of course, it depends on the rest of the chart. You need to look at the ruler of the second house, right, and all the aspects. But in terms of where you may make your money, okay, well, it could be through the educational field. And education could be teaching, like from pre-K through PhD. It could be a dean. It could be working, you could be in janitorial services. Honestly, you could be cleaning the building. It doesn't matter, but educational institutions, law, the courts, journalism, publishing as a field, anything to do with coaching. Now, that can be more like mentoring or life coaching. It can also be sports, okay? Counseling professions, okay, psychology, law is also one. Again, very beneficial if you've got Jupiter in the second house. Marketing, okay, even to some degree medicine, because Jupiter is associated because of its, remember, it ruled Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So it does have this connection to healing. Now, Jupiter in the second house, I have to say there is really, it's rare. It's really rare. Maybe if Saturn's there as well, this sort of brings it down a bit. But usually with Jupiter in the second, there's a strong ability to manifest money. And manifest money when you need it. And also just the earnings potential is usually really strong. Again, though, you might have to learn really how to hold on to it, because with Jupiter there is that optimism, there is a little bit of impulsiveness, and so you can be a little bit lavish, which is fine if you can afford it. I mean, there's no problem with that. But you could end up if you're going to plan something, just saying, like go that first class, and then it's kind of like, oh my God, I've got this bill now that I have to pay, or worse, it comes out and says, I overpaid for it, because you didn't really check it out enough. It was a little bit of that impulsiveness. So Jupiter in the second house. And in terms of what you spend your money on, by the way, because second house is also what do we spend it on. So I will say Jupiter in the second usually spends their money on travel, whether it's local, whether it's long distance, it doesn't make a difference. On travel and also on education. Okay, so anything to do that could be formal education. It can also be workshops. It can be books, anything that will increase the knowledge, because the second house is the house of values. What's important to you? And so with Jupiter, okay, knowledge is important. So is justice, right? Justice and fairness. So just mentioning that with the values, also in terms of Jupiter being philosophy and religion, just putting it in the second house of values, it's something where I will say if you've got Jupiter in the second, you're pretty broad-minded, tolerant, will listen, investigate, read, learn, but there's usually a strong interest in different with not outright religion, spirituality, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, but there's definitely an interest in it, and whatever your value is, your value is. But again, usually this, for the most part, there's tolerance. Now, Jupiter in the third house. So how do you benefit? What's it beneficial for? What's fortunate? Well, communications. Now, communications is really broad. Let's start with teaching. Okay, because that's a form of communication, and that can be teaching children or adults. In the third house, we usually say, oh, it's like preschool to high school, but the truth is it's still teaching. You can teach adults. You got Jupiter in the third house, it might be teaching adults. It also brings in writing, and while the ninth house is publishing, okay, the third house is writing, and that can be technical writing, legal writing, speech writing, creative writing, letter writing, I don't care. It's writing. There's usually communications, Jupiter in the third. very good, tends to be loquacious, likes to talk a lot, enjoys talking, speaking. Conversation is important. If Jupiter's in the third house, you need to express your opinion. You need to express, if the case may be, if Jupiter's in Cancer, you need to express your feelings. It's also very fortunate for careers connected to sales. And I'm going to say law in the sense of contract work, negotiating. And I'm making the distinction just because there are different types of lawyers, right? Some lawyers go in the courtroom and they argue. Third house, I hate to call them paper lawyers, but it's more about drafting documents and contracts and negotiating. And so Jupiter in the third, excellent for that. Any type of negotiating. It doesn't have to be in the legal field. If you're selling anything, you're always negotiating deals, right? You're closing deals. So talent there. Now, if you do not do it professionally, I'm still going to say Jupiter in the third, you could be very good at negotiating for yourself or standing up for yourself, or at least certainly selling yourself, so to speak. Okay. Third house also has to do with transportation. And so in terms of a field, Jupiter can be very fortunate for any field that is connected to transportation. Now, that could be something from being a taxi driver, a bus driver, working for the trains, can also be selling cars. For example, just as an example, and Jupiter in the third, you may enjoy cars. If you had all the money in the world, you might like to collect classic cars or something. But transportation, very much connected, and distribution methods. Want to mention that. So third house is about distribution methods, and that includes like the post office. Okay, and so I'm not saying, oh, you'll work in the post office if you've got Jupiter in the third, right? You can, but Jupiter is about marketing. So those MLMs, those multi-level marketing, I do see a lot of people who do well in it, okay? At least the clients have come to me who have done well. There's a connection to Jupiter, to that third house. It's in it. It rules it, something there is going on strongly aspected. It's not just Jupiter in the third by itself isn't enough, but it's, of course, the rest of the chart and the connections, but that Jupiter in the third, multi-level marketing. And third house is the house of our side-by-side relationships. So side-by-side, it's your siblings, if you have any. It's your cousins, if you have any. And it's your neighbors, which most people do, even if they're kind of far. And so those are your side-by-side relationships. So opportunities can come through those relationships. All right. So if someone says, hey, whether they want to set you up on a blind date or they want to tell you about a job, listen. I'm just going to say to you, listen. And so in terms of also, there's one other thing though about the third house. Hold on here, because I don't want to have to go back to it when I'm in the fourth house. Oh, just networking, social networking. So the third house, it's a lively house. Okay. And it does talk about the local area, and we would say like local, your local neighborhood and local, places. But at the end of the day, it is about networking. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be local networking. It's just about that interaction. So I don't care if it's on the phone, just anything, any form of communication, right? We do it by email, by telephone, by Skype, whatever. Just keep that in mind in terms of it being fortunate. Networking brings you opportunities if you've got Jupiter in the third house. Now, in the fourth house, so Jupiter in the fourth house, obviously fortunate for any endeavor, okay, or any business connected to property, to real estate. Now, this can be a home, it could be residential, it could be commercial, it could be a hotel, it could be a farm, it could be anything, whether you're going to live there or it's just an investment property. If you're going to buy it, rehab it, flip it, okay? Fourth house, Jupiter in there says, hey, there is potential, okay? Now, also related to property, and that's like architecture, okay, or doing drafting, right, doing the designs. I think that's, architecture, interior design, decorating, or any type of home-related products that you might produce for the home. And that could be, let's say, furniture, for example. It could be dishes, just anything that would be connected to the home. Now, Jupiter in the fourth house sometimes indicates a family business or opportunities or benefits that come through the family or parents. Okay, so the parental parent family business usually gets handed down through the parents, but just opportunities or benefits that come through the parents usually speaks to at least one parent being supportive. So Jupiter there in the 4th house, it is also an intuitive house. And so with Jupiter in the 4th house, there may be some intuitive ability. Everyone has intuitive ability. Jupiter there in the 4th house would suggest there's more that certainly it could be developed. The rest of the chart, though, really will tell the rest of the story and bear that out. Now, Jupiter in the 5th house. So it's very fortunate if we're talking about careers, anything to do with the entertainment industry or the sports industries, which really, if you go into arenas and sing, sports, that's entertainment, right? It's not for me because I'm not a sports person, but it is. But I think it is right for everybody else who enjoys it. It's entertainment, and so any type of entertainment in terms of performances, careers. It's also though very fortunate for careers in hospitality businesses. Okay. So that does sort of bring in the hotels, but it doesn't bring in the hotel itself in terms of owning it. It's more about working in it, okay? Now, the types, it is associated with gambling. And so as far as Jupiter in the 5th house being fortunate for gambling, for speculation, it can be, but I'm just going to say to you much, and I repeat much, solid caps, bold, double underscore, really depends on the rest of the chart. It is fortunate for anything connected to children. And, traditionally we say, Jupiter in the 5th, can be, many children, happy children, you love your children, beneficial children. And that can all be true. And of course, it's all a matter of choice. And a lot of times the children show up, they're not your own children. They may be your nieces, your nephews. If you're a teacher, Jupiter in the 5th house, let me say this, a lot of teachers have Jupiter in the 5th house. And, it could be a teacher, it could be a daycare provider, anything to do with children or youth. And I like to stress that just because when we say children, we tend to think of like youngsters, but it could be teens or tweens or young adults, late teens, early 20s. And so the other thing about Jupiter in the 5th is if you've got Jupiter in the 5th, you know how to have fun. You certainly like to have fun. Jupiter expands what it touches. All right. So having a good time, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, is important for you. The 5th house is also a passionate house. It's about romance. Jupiter in the 5th suggests there's plenty of romantic opportunities. Now, romantic opportunities does not guarantee that this 5th house romance of Mr. or Ms. right now is guaranteed that you're going to get them into the 7th house and be a committed relationship. But it does suggest that there's opportunity. Okay? And the other side of it in here, I'm going to talk about Jupiter being excess. And so the excess can be when we come to the gambling and the speculation. Okay. Again, you need to have sometimes boundaries and watch because there's that impulsiveness. And sometimes Jupiter in the 5th just loves to play the field. It's not, it depends certainly on the rest of the chart, but Jupiter in the 5th can really have a very happy romantic life and just really, enjoy dating and keeping it more or less at that, at that level. And it's not that it can't get more serious, but they can be very happy with just, let's live together and, let's keep it, let's just have fun. Let's not change anything. Now, Jupiter in the 6th house. So Jupiter in the 6th, well, what is it fortunate for? Well, we talk about work. So when we're talking about work, we're talking about careers really that are connected to service industries. And that also includes the military, by the way, and as well as, education is a service career, law, accounting. So service, again, is something else that's really broad. Now, 6th house is also health, right? Medicine. Medicine is a service. Veterinarians, 6th house rules pets. So if you've got Jupiter in the 6th house, you might be a real animal lover, pet person. And also, just want to mention service careers because that's spas, okay, massage, physical therapy, gyms, gym instructors, physical fitness instructors. And Jupiter in the 6th house is very fortunate for careers connected, obviously, to the law, but also for any type of counseling that includes psychology or being a therapist, coaching, life coaching, mentoring, and opportunities. I do want to say 6th house can be connected to aunts and uncles sometimes, and also co-workers. So opportunities can come to you through, through relatives, aunts, uncles, certainly through coworkers. And the other thing I want to mention about Jupiter being excess, the excess part of Jupiter. So Jupiter natally in the 6th and the 1st, people, astrology, traditional astrology will say there can be a battle with weight. Can't say that I've really seen that with any amount of like, wow, I really see Jupiter in the 6th and I think, oh, there's a battle with weight. Have seen it sometimes, but it really depends on the rest of the chart. But Jupiter in the 6th house, I feel when it comes to exercise can go either way. It can be, you could be someone that's fortunate, they live at the gym, they love to work out. But I'm going to tell you, Jupiter in the 6th can also be very lazy when it comes to exercise, can take the health for granted. And the excess part, so 6th house, it's work and service. It's grunt work as well, because remember, it's the Virgo house. And so there is that great work in all the service industry and the career, and that's all fine. But where you have to watch for the excess is getting caught up in the grunt work, where you never go higher. You get stuck in, I don't want to say in the details, but you end up doing a lot of work. You put in all these hours in your job, and you can end up feeling whether you're underpaid or you're not moving up, but you just do too much. Or it may be that where you work, you get more dumped on you under the, what was it they used to say to me? I have Jupiter in the 6th. Well, we're giving it to you because you can handle it. Well, that's great. But, how about give me a little bit of money, to go with it? Right, because I'm so wonderful. So you do have to watch out for that, okay? And the other thing about Jupiter in the 6th house. So industries. So we talk about, people talk about food and they talk about Taurus and Cancer with food. And I've got to say, listen, Taurus certainly loves food. Okay, they love all sensual delights. They enjoy eating, right? But it's about quality. And again, it's a sensory experience. Cancer is also associated with food, right? And Cancer rules, the stomach, and it's also sort of confidence, security, and sometimes people, right, eat for that. But the truth of the matter is that Cancer and Taurus, they may have, they like food, but they're not the foodies of the zodiac. They really aren't. It's Virgo. It's the 6th house. The 6th house rules restaurants. Its 6th house rules chefs. And if you look at a lot of the chefs, you will see a lot of them there's a heavy Virgo emphasis in their charts. And so 6th house rules, again, restaurants. So in terms of a career or in terms of, again, jobs, anything to do with food, could be with drink as well. We go a little bit more to the 12th house with that, but again, anything to do in the food and beverage industry, your chefs, your baking, whatever it may be, 6th house can be very fortunate for that type of a business. Now, 7th house. So Jupiter in the 7th house, and I just realized I missed something. All right, so I am going to rewind first, not rewind, but just say this. If Jupiter's in the 4th house and it is conjunct the IC, okay, it's conjunct the 4th house cusp, it's opposing the 10th house. That is also where sometimes the good fortune comes for a family business or family members that support your destiny or your goals in life. Okay. Jupiter in the 7th house, especially if it is conjunct the descendant, can be very fortunate for marriage, for friendship, for business partners. It's a little bit of a magnet that can certainly draw people to you, helpful people, people who lift you up. Okay. Now, especially professionals, and I have to say, if you've got Jupiter in the 7th house, even if it's not conjunct the 7th house descendant, it can be really lucky, and that's just the way I'm going to put it, that when you need help, it's like, gee, I need some legal advice, or I need somebody to show me whatever. It's easy. It seems easier to find it, or it can be. I'm just going to say it's sort of like an ask. I'm not saying it's always given, but Jupiter in the 7th is very good for attracting helpful people. So if you've got Jupiter in the 7th, you want to ask for help, because most of the time you're going to hear yes. You might hear no sometimes, but opportunities and benefits can definitely come through your spouse or partner. And I mean a romantic partner as well as professional partners, business partners. There can be opportunities through your close friends as well. It's a very fortunate position. It's favorable for working with the public in any capacity. And seventh house rules clients. So if a client-driven business, such as, law, astrology, whatever, can be good for attracting them. Also, anything connected, seventh house, any type of a Libra field, counseling. Again, law comes back in there as well. And any client business, and here you can go back to spa as well, because you're talking about clients. All right, can be very fortunate. And again, it's a good placement if you need to depend on the public, whether it's for your business or just even for popularity. Quite honestly, Jupiter in the seventh can be very fortunate. So opportunities definitely through other people, and you're good at working. Usually good at that. I would say at working the room, but really you are. So Jupiter in the 8th house. Well, that can be very fortunate for gaining money. Okay, through gifts, lotteries, inheritances, right? And also forms of income that comes through intellectual property, like royalties, licenses, grants, scholarships, another way money can come to you. But here's the thing about Jupiter in the 8th, so we think about this money like more like windfalls or, again, this intellectual property. But 8th house money is also money that comes from public assistance. And so Jupiter in the 8th can be fortunate. So if you do need public assistance of some type, I'm just going to say Jupiter in the 8th can maybe help you get approved. But it's not necessarily like, oh, Jupiter's in the 8th house, so like I'm just going to be, so rich from all of these things. Here's the thing about the 8th house as well. I always say, because it is about unearned money, and it's also our partner's resources. So I will say this, if you've got Jupiter in the 8th, can you benefit through partner resources? I'm going to say yes. If you're married, you have a business partnership, the money probably flows to you. Even if you're divorced, that Jupiter in the 8th would suggest, hey, you do get paid your child's support and, and maintenance. Again, it's going to depend on other things in the chart. But the point about the 8th house, and I say other people's money, is that it's not always that it means a person is wealthy, because here's something else. The 8th house is the house of debt. Jupiter expands what it touches. So on the one hand, you could probably be fortunate if you need a mortgage, if you need a credit line, you need a credit card, you could probably get it. But you have to watch the excess. You've got to watch that, you get that big line that you just don't, max out the card, and that becomes a pattern. Okay, so that's why, when you see a heavy 8th house, let me put it that way, it can be, money-wise, listen, they can be wealthy, they could be living on a trust fund, or they could be living, quite frankly, on public assistance. Now, Jupiter in the 8th house, that is usually, and I say usually, I want to say almost always, an indicator of a strong psychic gift, all right, and possibly making money through the psychic arts. Now, when I say psychic gifts, it can really take in anything, but it also takes in healing. Jupiter in the 8th, there's usually an ability to heal. Now, it can be physical healing, like energetic healing, again, literally connected to to medicine, but it can also be healing through counseling, because the 8th house is a deeply psychological house. So it can be very fortunate if you are involved in any career or interested in a career that is connected, to psychology, as well as anything to do with the death, and whether that is literally working, it could be connected to hospice, it could be estate work, 8th house crimes, detective work, research, forensic sciences, which sort of to me goes with medicine. Acupuncture, just want to mention that to me is very 8th house, I've seen in the charts. And so life and death occupations as well. And that can be literally like you're at risk for life and death, like police, firefighters, the military, or occupations, for example, a surgeon, or an EMT worker where you're dealing with, life and death. Now, in terms of benefits or when your opportunities come, certainly it can come through the resources of other people, and that includes spouses, that includes partners, but really it just includes other people, period. Jupiter in the 8th house is good at getting other people's support. It could be good for raising money. So if you need investors, that could be really, I was going to say, very, very beneficial. If you're running for public office, Jupiter in the 8th could be very good for getting backing as well. So ninth house. So Jupiter's in the ninth house, and being in the ninth house, it's dignified because that's the Sagittarius house. That is fortunate for any endeavor that could be connected to foreign affairs, foreign nations, import, export, interpreting foreign languages. And by the way, third house, if I didn't mention it, Jupiter in the third house also is connected to foreign languages and interpreting. And that includes things like, that includes ASL, American Sign Language, or if you live in a different country, British Sign Language. And also, back in the day, there was this thing called stenography. I was a secretary. I took Greg years ago. Before then, it was mostly Pittman, I think. That was a pencil. Greg, we used pen. And again, it was like a foreign language. So there's this talent there for foreign languages, a third house, as well as a ninth house. I will just say that is talent and ability. Travel in general. Jupiter in the ninth, a lot of wanderlust. You'll probably love to travel. And it can be, I'm going to say, opportunities or beneficial for you. It's partly connected to knowledge, and so that benefits you. But the other thing is, yes, can you actually find opportunities in foreign places, countries? Sure. It can also be, again, that you meet them because, hey, you're in the airport, something like that, or they're sitting next to you on the plane. Media, and by that I mean radio, television, publishing, and journalism, all can be a potential avenue of success for a ninth house Jupiter, as well as the court system. Now, seventh house, didn't mention that, but maybe I did, right? Jupiter in law. The difference between the seventh and the ninth house, now they're both houses connected to the law, but the ninth house is more where where people sue us and we sue people. It's litigation. It's adversarial. Ninth house law is a little bit different because it's not necessarily the adversarial. It can still be adversarial, but it's different. It's not the adversarial part like the out and out, bloodthirsty fighting in the seventh house. The ninth house is more about where it goes to for appeals, and it's also more like estate planning. You're adopting. Just it's that type of legal. It's paper. It's simple. It's civil. I should call it civil. I'm going to call it civil, and so it's also connected certainly to the courts and the higher courts. Now, ninth house also associated with grandchildren. So just want to mention that Jupiter in the ninth sometimes can indicate, many grandchildren. And it is also connected to in-laws, to some, like brother-in-laws, sometimes sister-in-laws, things of that nature. And so sometimes benefits can come through them as well. Now, the 10th house. Yeah, so let's talk about Jupiter in the 10th house, and especially if it is conjunct the midheaven. So the 10th house, it's the house, we say career, calling. It is associated with fame. If you want to be famous, having Jupiter in the 10th house, especially conjunct the midheaven, that can be really, really helpful. And whether you want to be in the spotlight or not, you might find yourself there. Natural talent, teaching, leadership, speaking, okay? Being in front of that camera, being in that spotlight, being written up in the papers. Jupiter in the 10th natally, it can help you, you can attract attention easily. And so that can be really helpful if you want to get right, when you want to get noticed and you want to advance in your field. And it also suggests executive ability. Talent, people listen to you. You can motivate others, inspire others. It can be very, charismatic. So you would think about it as very fortunate, right? If you want to pursue some type of public position or public office. And again, public doesn't mean necessarily you're going to Congress. It could be something local. It could be the PTA. It could be your local chapter of some group that you belong to. But in that sense, it's right a little bit more public. Now, I said Jupiter is great in the 10th for attracting attention. Yes, it is. But again, we said attracting attention. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is always going to attract good attention. Okay, so the bottom line is this: if you're doing, good works, great, we'll notice you. If you're a scheming liar, terrible person, hey, we're going to notice you. So just keep that in mind about it. And Jupiter in the 10th, you do have to watch because it is public. It is what people see, and you can come across certainly as very benevolent. Right? Very benevolent. But the other side of it is that you have to watch with Jupiter that you do not come across as being a little arrogant or a little condescending. Opportunities, benefits, where do they come from? Well, 10th house is associated with parents, right? And 10th opposes a 4th, but can also come, it's usually good favor with people who are in authority, your bosses, your supervisors. Depending on the chart, in a wonderful scenario, it can suggest a family dynasty, maybe one that you're starting or one that you're part of. But certainly opportunities, it's just very favorable. When I say with people in authority, I don't mean it just in the career. It's like, let's say you wanted to, you own a house and you needed a permit and you have to go and deal with the local government. Those people are in authority. They can approve your permit or not. Jupiter in the 10th, like I say, can be very good for having favor with people who, quite frankly, have decision-making authority over you. Jupiter, let's go to the 11th house. So if we're talking about the 11th house, we say one's hopes, one's wishes, right? One's goals. So Jupiter in the 11th, on one hand, we say, well, it should be fortunate for achieving them. Certainly it tells me big dreams, big hopes, big goals. There's a lot of vision, all right? What is helpful? What is lucky? Well, group activities. That is part of what helps you or supports you to achieving hopes and goals if you have Jupiter in the 11th. Now, Jupiter in the 11th house, you can easily be recognized as a leader. And, if you want to run for a leadership position, great. If you don't, you may be asked to or nominated. Now, 11th house, anything to do with a non-profit type of business or agencies. 11th house also connected to politics, to unions, government organizations, humanitarian causes or organizations can be very fortunate to work in these type of industries. If you're in a business that can some way serve the government, I'm just going to say Jupiter in the 11th can be actually helpful if you want to obtain some type of, let's say, government contract. Having friends and being part of a group tends to be important socially to someone with Jupiter in the 11th. They tend to be a joiner, and they enjoy the interaction. Now, benefits also come. If you've got Jupiter in the 11th, it does pay 11th house, group relationships, because benefits will come through them. Friends, acquaintances, and colleagues. Now, 7th house are your best friends and your closest friends. 11th house is more their casual friends. They're the people you see at your monthly meeting. They're the people at the professional networking events. And they're people that they're friends, and you may really consider them friends. But like there's different levels of friends, and they're not the inner circle. The inner circle is the 7th house, okay? So 11th house, also I just want to mention the hopes and the goals. Thing about Jupiter, you do have to watch, if anything. You can have this big vision and this big goal, and that's wonderful. Like I said, you can really achieve, great things. But do have to watch that you don't, again, it's a little bit of that bite off too much than you can chew. Not that you can't do it ultimately, but you may not be able to do it right out of the gate. So that's why, like I say, it could be something with the budget, where you stretch the budget so you can make a certain big splash, where it may really pay better to sort of just rein it in a little bit. The 11th house also, I mentioned humanitarian causes and certainly politics, but it doesn't have to be, it can be something of a personal nature when we talk about the groups. It can be a hobby. 5th house I know is hobbies, but your 11th house are your group relationships. So it can be a group that you belong to that is just really more of a social, or you have this common interest. But again, you can benefit or get opportunities through those people. And when I say opportunities, I mean opportunities for anything. If you're in sales and I don't know, you're selling vacuum cleaners. I don't know if they still do that anymore. I remember when they used to go door to door. Or again, if you are fundraising or something, it's that whole social work. I'm going to say working the room. All right. So just, you want to let people know what you're doing. Now, Jupiter in the 12th house. So Jupiter in the 12th can be really fortunate for any type of a creative endeavor. 12th house is associated with writing. Jupiter is associated with publishing. It's a very common placement in charts of actors, directors, people who do work behind the scenes in the creative. Again, writers, artists, photographers. And Jupiter in the 12th house, if you do have Jupiter in the 12th house, I will say this, it's extremely intuitive. It's very fortunate for spiritual professions. All right. And there's usually a psychic gift, a healing gift. It can also be traditional medicine. psychology, careers connected to pharmaceuticals, okay, anything to do with, I'm going to say with drugs, the psychology. 12th house is associated with sleep, and so there can be talent and ability for anything to do with sleep, and that could be something like psychological, but it could even be, I don't know, helping people sleep better, and it may not really have to do with psychology. It might be something more spiritual, and for example, meditation, yoga careers, meditation, yoga, anything connected where the mind is involved, or mind-body, I'm going to say practices. Pilates also, because you need to focus. Martial arts, connection there to the 12th house. Martial arts also connected to the 8th house, the mind, and the body, but I'm just going to say also the 12th house. I've seen it show up. Can be excellent at supporting other people at, could be I'm going to say sort of end of life, hospice, careers in that nature, nursing, okay, hospitals, any place that is connected to confinement. Now, Jupiter in the 12th, and speaking of confinement, what it tells me, anyone with Jupiter in the 12th, they need to recharge their batteries. They do absolutely need to have some time by themselves alone where they can just sit and honestly breathe. When crises occur, and they do for all of us, I have to say, person who's got Jupiter in the 12th, it could be surprising how much strength they have. And, you wonder how are they dealing with it? How are they putting up with it? But Jupiter in the 12th, it seems like no matter how terrible the situation, they have this ability to really dig deep, and they pull out this strength. Okay, if they need to just get through, maybe it's that I got to get through one more day or one more hour or one more minute. But that Jupiter in that sense, because Jupiter is associated with healing, and the 12th house, it is a house also of subconscious, it's psychological. They are able to really dig deep within themselves. There's usually a lot of faith. Now, that can be spiritual faith, religious faith, but also I'm going to say just this faith and believing that things will work out. Jupiter in the 12th, also talent, ability for manifesting. So that actually, might hear my dog in the background. That's fine. Valentino says hi, everybody. So that wraps up the 12 houses. And of course, there's a sign, there's a house, and you put those together, you blend them together, and then we look at the aspects. But for now, this is the Jupiter through the 12 houses. As always, thank you for joining me. And until next time, may Jupiter's blessings be your constant companion.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. To schedule a consultation, please visit DebraClementAstrologer.com.